You're a ghost, tra la 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 la. You're a ghost, tra la 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 la. Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Herald Live. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. Starting 1 minute early here, we're going to talk today about new comics, about your questions, about what's coming up in the world of comics and pop culture. Again, I'm Dave. You can go over to comicbookherald.com for more of my work at Comic Book Herald, pretty much anywhere on social, so long as those socials remain. Today, we're going to primarily be talking about Immortal X-Men number 8, but it is going to lead into conversations about the upcoming Sins of Sinister crossover event in X-Men that I'm very excited about. I'm going to talk a little bit about Immortal X-Men as a whole. Definitely going to talk about Kieran Gillen's role and all that, as well as my upcoming live CBH interview with the writer of Immortal X-Men and one of the heads of X. Some spoilers may follow. If you have not read Immortal X-Men number 8, go do that and then come on back and listen here. Get in your questions and thoughts. This is definitely going to be a question and conversation heavy episode of CBH Live as we speculate wildly on what is going on with Mr. Sinister. What are the schemes? How will they build to the Sins of Sinister and beyond? So, thanks, everybody. If you're here live, much appreciated. Again, the super chat is open. Thanks to everybody who donates and supports the site and the show. Let's do this and talk Immortal X-Men number 8. Now, first, we have some questions from some listeners right off the bat. Let's just dive right into these puppies. Okay, Phil asks, is Sins of Sinister happening just to expedite the future happenings of Powers of 10, hastening a conclusion of the era? Because that would stink. There is probably, he actually says that would blow. I don't know why I'm censoring stink and blow. I think for children, for the children that I have who I do not support or endorse watching my own live streams, I guess that's who that censorship is for. I think there's nothing probably that X-Men fans fear more than the end of the Krakoa era. Like nothing gets X readers hot and bothered like the potential end. I mean, obviously teasing a fall of X later in 2023 got people real worked up. You know, oh, it can't end. How could it end? The idea that it could be anything less than like just a year's worth build to a spectacular, fiery conclusion is terrifying, I think, to X-Men comics fans. So I don't think you're alone in that fear. I think, is it happening just to expedite the future happenings of Powers of 10? How about we reframe that another way? How about, is this going to be the first thing that really engages with the Powers of 10 buildup and all of the crazy cosmic shenanigans that are out there that are generally untouched, you know, that are generally not worked with? I think that's the upside. That's the huge upside, you know? So I look at that not as like, I mean, it could come out that way, right? We could get these comics and it could be like, oh, they fast-tracked dominions and societies just to say they did it, and it never comes up again. That would, I think, be an unsatisfying approach to these concepts that were built in House of X and Powers of 10 by Hickman and company. But I don't anticipate that's what it's going to be. I mean, Kieran Gillen, Al Ewing, Cy Spurrier are all way too smart and way too clever and way too good at this for it to be just give the people what they want. They're going to want to do interesting things in and of themselves with these concepts. So I don't think, first off, I think it's going to rule. I think it's going to be really, really fun and exciting to see. I also don't think it's going to hasten a conclusion to the era, right? Like Sins of Sinister is a 2-month alternate reality story that's going to take place in like January and February of next year with comics being released. Fall of X isn't scheduled for what, like later in the summer or ideally the fall of 2023. Like there's still more to come. And again, I don't think Fall of X is actually going to be an ending of this era. I think it's more going to be like the dissolution of versions of it, you know? Plus, I guess the counterpoint to all this that I will say, endings are good. Okay? As superhero readers, we often forget that it is a good thing for comics to actually end in a satisfying manner. We so rarely get that. These things never end. It's forever right? It's the ending of Inferno, just locked in the room with your superhero comics on and on and on forever. And that unleashes a lot of potential and stuff that I really enjoy about the decades long ways that creators can play off of things that came again decades before. But it does also create an issue where like stories don't end. Not only do they not end satisfyingly, they just straight up don't end. It's just always on to the next thing. Fall of X ending the Krakoa era, like in theory, would not be the worst thing. You know, I think in practice probably it would, because it feels like there's so much meat on the bones still. So I don't think the work has been done to the point where that would feel like we're ready for it. But Sins of Sinister, I think, is the appropriate time to get into, okay, what are Sinister schemes? I mean, that is the central through line of Kieran Gillen's run on Immortal X-Men. I mean, it's not surprising, right? Like, Kieran Gillen is this creator who comes in with Uncanny X-Men in 2011, basically recreates Nathaniel Essex as a way more interesting version, okay? Takes this villain, says, who hasn't been played with for a little while? Okay, it's Mr. Sinister. It's basically been since Messiah Complex. Let's do something different. Let's do something new. Makes Mr. Sinister way more interesting. No one takes that and runs with it until Hickman in House of X and Powers of 10, and now Gillen's back. Like, it's the least surprising thing in the world that he would come back in and basically do a Mr. Sinister 12-issue maxi, but through the lens of the Quiet Council of the X-Men. So you get to have a focus on each character. And we'll talk about that too, because I feel like the degree of difficulty on what he's pulling off on this book is like almost underrated, honestly. Even though the book is, I think, pretty well supported. So you have a creator who knows this character well. Of course they're going to be the ones to follow through on those threads. All of this is a good thing, I promise. Like this being a Sinister-focused book, these mysteries unraveling, building to a Sins of Sinister alternate reality, all this to me feels like a very good thing. And part of it is because it's going to lead to good stories, and it already has. But the other part of it is forward momentum, right? It is taking teasers and it is driving them to a logical, promised conclusion. There are still a lot of elements that you can do that with, right? You can do it with the Phalanx. You can do it with Ascension. You can do it with Dominions. You can do it with, I mean, just Krakoan medicine is still kind of a thing that could be touched on in way more detail. You could do it with, what does Krakoa look like throughout the galaxy, right? There's all these things that you can build on from the Bible, from the template of House and Powers. Each one of those things that gets built on, in Fall of X, what I anticipate will be an Orcus versus Krakoa final showdown. Good. Like, that's what that should be, right? We should be moving forward on these things, actually seeing them through, and then dealing with the fallout. And I think that's the expectation, is there will be fallout. I mean, the other piece of this, too, that I've been saying week after week now, is the Marvel Universe is super reliant on X-Men comics and the Krakoa era specifically. Okay? Like, this Marvel Universe, where comics are at right now, the center is Krakoa. It is this era of X-Men comics, and I think rightly so. But we're seeing even more evidence of that. Just this week, there was an announcement that Captain Marvel is going to have a 3-part crossover with the X-Men title starting in early 2023. There's going to be a crossover between Captain Marvel and X-Men. Kelly Thompson's still writing Captain Marvel, Jerry Duggan on X-Men. Carol has a long history with the X-Men and the Brood specifically. It's going to be a Brood, I forget what they call it, Brood Wars or something like that, Rage of the Brood, I don't know, something like that. That makes sense. But again, that's another example of, like, the other books are going to get pulled into the X-Men's orbit. The idea that there would be sort of a rapid conclusion to the Krakoa era derails everything the Marvel Universe has right now. That's the core. That's what is giving, that is the rising tide that is lifting all other Marvel comics. There's not much more to the Marvel Universe right now than that. Avengers is a vacuum. It is a black hole, okay, of never-ending, unfulfilling stories right now. Fantastic Four just got a reboot, but it's sort of it's a quiet, kind of meditative character study approach, seemingly. Okay, so yes, this is going to go for a little while. Marvel needs it to, frankly, because I don't know what the center of it is. And like the Destiny of X has been a really good, steady course correction. If nothing else, Al Ewing and Kieran Gillen at the head of the line with Immortal X-Men and X-Men Red have elevated it to levels that it wasn't at for a lot of the reign, and now it's back to, and it's exciting. It's exciting, honestly. Like I think it's going to lead to, it at least has that potential again. I'm like genuinely, genuinely, really looking forward to the Sins of Sinister. So that was a super long answer to what was, maybe just like half a thought. But that means it's a good question. Okay, we got two other questions that are super specific to Immortal X-Men and the conclusion. So we'll get into those. Okay, we'll get into those. Immortal X-Men number 8 is written by Kieran Gillen. We got art here by Mikkel Bandini and David Curiel on colors. So this is the Mystique-centered issue. So every issue of Immortal X-Men is focused on one member of the Quiet Council primarily, right? Each member gets a focus, but then you have tertiary players, primarily Mr. Sinister, sort of driving central narrative throughout it all, right? But this is the Mystique issue. We had the Destiny issue in number 3, which was fantastic. Mystique gets number 8, and because this is the first time we're really getting a look at Mystique and Destiny's relationship in full, to this degree. Obviously, that is a big part of it as well. We open this thing with Destiny at Alamogordo, which is a New Mexico research facility. I think I've talked about this in the past on some Crack and Krakoas, but like basically what this does, it's a Fabian Nicieza idea, I think, and then Mike Carey expands on it in the very good X-Men Legacy run. This is during the story arc where it's revealed that Mr. Sinister placed a backup copy of himself in Professor X's brain and tries to take over Professor X's body. That happened. It's very involved, and you don't need to know a heck of a lot more to it than that. I mean, you should read the Mike Carey run because it's super worth it. But you don't need to know a heck of a lot more than that, other than like Destiny was a part of this research group that included Professor X's dad. I think it included Juggernaut's dad, and it included this Dr. Nathan Milbury, who that was a thinly veiled disguise for Mr. Sinister. Okay, so Destiny works with Mr. Sinister in the 1940s on this really kind of heinous Black Womb project that is like experimenting on kids. It is genetic. I guess it's eugenics, and it's just kind of like nasty and gross. And Mystique even, right? Mystique is not. What do you call it? She does not have a weak stomach for violence and these things. But even she sees it and she's like, "What is Destiny doing? How is Destiny a part of this?" But she tends to trust that Destiny sees things and sees the import of it. And she, there's kind of some narration now that she's like looking back. Destiny was playing these games and getting a sense of Sinister to ultimately get to this stage of Krakoa. It's a super fun issue. It's really well done. You get Mystique and Destiny as like literal Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler. They are tracking sort of a Jack the Ripper version of Nathaniel Essex shortly after his transformation into Mr. Sinister by Ensaba Nur, aka Apocalypse. So if you've read like what is it? The Further Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, is that where it happens? No. Whatever the Mr. Now I'm blanking. I think that's it. The origins of Mr. Sinister, where he is, he's transformed from this scientist with iffy ethics into a mad scientist who excises his emotions and his caring, essentially. And he talks here about like, I don't need a wife anymore. What do I have? What do I have need for a wife for? He does that through Apocalypse's technology. That turns into Mr. Sinister. Gillen has a really interesting interpretation of all that, in that his Essex and Sinister are very Jekyll and Hyde. Like there is a Nathaniel Essex who is the weak, dying doctor of sorts, and then there's this Mr. Sinister that is this uber powerful Hulk-Hyde monster that is murdering. So Mystique and Destiny are on their trail, trying to figure things out. It's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. I mean, this series is really It's really excellent. There's a delicate degree of difficulty in what Gillen's doing with the one character per issue approach to Immortal X-Men. Like, this is a hard structure to have saddled yourself with. You know, it defies a lot of what we typically expect from Marvel superhero comics, in the sense of needing, a narrative sort of driving through all these books and bouncing a bunch of different plot lines that all sort of feed into the same narrative. It's kind of doing that, through the Sinister connections and through this Destiny versus Sinister war, which is, 100+ years old at this point. But it's also doing a really unique and satisfying look at each of these individual 12 people in the Quiet Council. It's quite the work. It's quite the work. So again, this is a continuity heavy thing, I think, for Destiny and Sinister at the same time. I think it's all pretty accessible. Like, you might not know. There's a number of references that, if you're not steeped in that lore, and again, like the number of folks who are like, oh yeah, I've researched the hell out of the Black Moon Project. Like, they are the people who have had to write or speak about Mr. Sinister at length. Like, I guarantee you that is the crowd. It is just people who are like, I have had to try to make a Mr. Sinister reading order and follow the Black Moon Project because it's super scattered. But this, this kind of ties it up succinctly, I think, and I think effectively. So I also really like the detail here of, so Nathaniel Essex is studying, essentially the mutant genome for like the first time. And he doesn't know what it is, right? But he knows he's fascinated by it. He knows he loves its evolution. When he sees that Mystique and Destiny have abilities, he describes them as Essex men, which is a very good Gillen-esque pun. That works here. That works here. As well as the commentary on, if we fought back on, the label men every time, we would never get anything done, which is kind of a decent explanation for, like, hey, why'd they go with the name X-Men? So, okay, a couple things here. The very ending of this comic is certainly the most clearly we've had it laid out as to the nature of Mr. Sinister's and clones in the Krakoa era. Okay, now we have seen previously in Jerry Duggan's X-Men that the one of the characters in Orchis, Dr. Stasis, one of the humans who is working against Krakoa to try to maintain human superiority on the planet and keep mutants from, ascending. They are revealed to be the Sinister of, is it Clubs? A different suit than the Red Diamond we typically see on Sinister. And then it was like, oh, okay, so we're doing the 4 suits of Sinister, but as of yet, those are the only 2. Like, we know our Red Diamond Sinister is the one on Krakoa. Presumably that's our mutant Sinister. We have Dr. Stasis is presumably our human Sinister. And then we have 2 others. In the very ending of Immortal X-Men here, it shows that, so Nathaniel Essex dies. He sees something, red and black, and then he has the line, you're a ghost, you're a ghost. And Nathaniel Essex dies. So the original Essex, the Mr. Sinister, is dead. And part of the mystery of what Mystique is talking about in the present day is, like, we actually don't, or she's like, I don't actually know how he came back. I wonder if Destiny does. Like, I think she would have told me. It seems like Destiny probably does know, because she finds, without Mystique, the clone tanks, where each one has a suit of cards. We have our diamond, our club, our heart, and our spade. All the tanks are busted open. All the Sinisters are loose. So there is confirmation here of 4 sort of original cloned Sinisters, but none of them are actually the original Nathaniel Essex, which I wonder if that's why we keep seeing the line, you're a ghost, you're a ghost. I mean, my prediction when Immortal X-Men #1 came out was that maybe Destiny told Mr. Sinister he's not the original. If you remember from that issue, Destiny leans over on a park bench and whispers to Mr. Sinister something. We don't know what. And then he, like, melts. He disintegrates and he mutters, you're a ghost, before he seemingly dies. At the time, I was like, I don't know what that could be, but I wonder if she said, you're not the original like you think, and that triggers some sort of destruction mechanism. It remains a tantalizing possibility, that they are suddenly realizing they think they're the real one, but actually they're just a ghost. I feel like it's going to be a little more complicated than that. I feel like it's going to be more complicated, but it's out there. It's a possibility. And so the other two Sinister clones that we haven't met that are going to be part of this, pack of four. Last week, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago now, after reading, what was it? I think X-Men Red, maybe, and the way Al Ewing's using this character Orbis Stellaris, I was like, oh, okay, so that's a Mr. Sinister. So that's our Space Sinister. Okay, I think I locked that one in a couple weeks ago. And then we have one more. We have one more mystery Sinister to get revealed. And it increasingly seems to me like that's probably going to be the character from Legion of X that was introduced, that Gillen then pulled in to Immortal X-Men in the Sebastian Shaw issue, and that's Mother Righteous, this brand new character. I think this would be the one that doesn't, like if her name was Mother Superior, which is already a character, it would clearly be Mr. Sinister because we'd have an MS going on. The fact that it's an R throws us a mild complication, but it's the same sort of thing, right? It's a two-part name, and it's a character that came out of nowhere, has tremendous import, you have Cy Spurrier and Kieran Gillen as two of the three writers of Sins of Sinister. They're both playing with this new character. That's not an accident, okay? That's probably not an accident. So I think that's going to be the Sinister of the Astral Plane, the one who gets into psychic stuff, okay? And I think those are going to be our four. I think those are going to be our four. It will be super fascinating to see what kinds of different things are they all doing, because their schemes don't align. I don't anticipate, or it would be a nice twist if the four of them came together in any capacity, because certainly on the surface we have a Mr. Sinister on Krakoa who's doing his thing, but is with the mutants, and then we have a Sinister on the opposite side with Orcus, although if they're simultaneously scheming for themselves and kind of doing their own thing, then maybe it doesn't matter what sides they're aligned with. But then we're going to have the one of space, and we're going to have one of the astral plane. I think those are our four Sinisters. So this isn't, the fact that there are like four Sinisters of card suits is not a brand new thing, clearly, but it is a step in the right direction, and it is development, and it is confirmation that that's definitely happening. Okay, that is definitely happening. It's good. It's good. I'm super excited to see where this Mister goes. There's going to be 2 issues of Immortal X-Men, number 9 and number 10, that come out prior to Sins of Sinister. And, one thing I had forgotten so I'm interviewing Gillen this weekend, and so I'm rereading some of the, actually like all of his creator-owned stuff, but then I was actually looking at Immortal X-Men, number 1, and then the first 3 after reading number 8 today. And in number 1, there's a data page called Immortal Sinister Secrets. And what you realize is each of the 13 items is an issue of the comic of Immortal X-Men, and it's describing basically what's going to happen in that issue based on who the issue is focused on. So number 1 is the Sinister issue, and it says which certain young lady is keeping private company with Mr. Sinister. And the reveal at the end of issue 1 is Sinister's keeping clones of Moira McTaggart, and he's using her mutant lifeline reactivation to basically live, die, repeat his way through X-Men comics, right? And this narrative. Another detail that I noticed there, actually with the clones, that I just noticed, and maybe we talked about this previously, but I don't remember. The Moira clone in the middle tank is awake. All the other ones are, eyes closed. Sinister's just using them. The one in the middle is awake. And if these clones are developing some degree of consciousness, I do wonder if that is a road back to getting not evil robot Moira. I don't think that's probably the main objective of this book, but it feels like a possible out, that you could have Moira Pryor, right? You could have your Madeline Pryor version of Moira, who's awake in the clone tanks, come out and actually be the version of that character that I think we all want to see. That'd be cool. That would be cool. I would be into that. Obviously, I would. It's my idea, and I'm pitching it. But anyway, this Immortal Sinister Secrets goes on, and then it's clear, like, oh, okay, number 2 is talking about hope, number 3 is talking about destiny. These were all the featured characters. Now, the ones we have coming, and so, like, the one for today, based on the story of Mystique and Destiny, is Sherlock dealing with Mr. Sinister. It says, acting like being immortal is a new thing, is very gouch. Some of us have been rocking the look for a while, and trust me, we've had all manner of adventures, right? So it's teasing the fact that this is going to be, focused on the fact that they've been doing stories for a good long time. Number 9. So the cover is teasing a Kate Pride-centered episode. It's got Mr. Sinister holding, like, giant cable guns at her. Okay, and what number 9 says is, look on the bright side. The council chamber being white means it's easy to see where you have to mop up the blood stains. Obviously, I don't know how, but I think issue 9 is going to be mutant massacres in the Quiet Council, but, like, repeatedly. Like resetting the lifeline, Sinister scheming to kill any number of Quiet Council members. Now, how that's simultaneously going to be our Kate issue, interesting question. I do not have the answer to, certainly. But I think we can expect, like, a lot of folks on the Quiet Council are going to get it. Probably over and over again in this issue. Number 10, the second issue that's going to come out as a prelude to Sins of Sinister, says, finally, someone who actually deserves it gets thrown in the pit. Good riddance. The cover to issue 10 is Professor X with his cerebral helmet smashed with flames all around him. Every implication here is Professor X gets thrown into the pit. Every implication. Okay? I don't think it would take much, honestly, for the council to find reason to do that. So, could the build to Sins of Sinister in many ways sort of begin and end with getting Professor X thrown into the pit? I buy it. I feel like there's a I don't know that it's a Dave Stinney lock that's what's happening, because it feels maybe too predictable. If the tea leaves are like, because usually reading into comic book covers is a fool's errand. It will not tell you anything. But I don't know. I feel like 70% confidence level. All right, like 70% confidence level that Professor X is going in the pit. All right, or it could be. I'm seeing here from Xavier, isn't Beast a better candidate for the pit? I mean, yeah, absolutely. Beast is our absolute best candidate for the pit. Could it be the Professor X issue, and sort of his sins are outed in their many detail? His role with X-Force gets called into question, and then, yeah, maybe it's not him that actually goes in. Maybe it's Beast, but it feels like a lost because it's his game, and it's one of his original 5. I think that could work. I think that could work, too. So, yeah. I think that's where we're, or not I think, I mean, that's where we're heading. Issue 11 and 12, we don't know the covers. We don't have previews yet, I don't think. The only characters that we haven't had a focus on will have been Colossus, who is still a weird Russian mole. Is there any other kind of mole? He's still out there lingering. Sinister knows his deal, by the way. I don't know that anybody else on the Quiet Council does. And then who am I missing? Who am I missing that we haven't had? We had our Exodus. We had Mystique just now. We had our Nightcrawler. Who am I missing? Storm? Maybe? Is Storm still on the Quiet Council? She doing double duty with the Brotherhood? How does she do it? How does she do it? It's interesting. I'm super invested in where all this is going. Love Immortal X-Men. Love where it's going with Sinister. Get in your questions and thoughts. Otherwise, I'm going to address these ones we had right up front. Quick drink of water, and I'll be back. Kurt here asks, is the pit still hell since Sabretooth busted out? This is actually a question that I had for Victor Laval, an interview we just did this past weekend about Sabretooth, and it was a little too spoilery, like to address properly. One other thing that I will say, I mean, this interview is going to go up, and I encourage you all to listen to it because it's super fun talk, and Victor's fascinating, awesome writer. One thing he teased about Sabretooth and Sabretooth and the Exiles and where that book is going is that got my attention. Is that book's going to have a lot more Doug Ramsey stuff than I think I was anticipating. Because, so Doug's a pretty major player because of his role in sort of being the voice of what's going on in Krakoa. And remember, the Pit is a function of Krakoa. He's a pretty big role in the first Sabretooth mini, but he's a secondary character. Sabretooth and the Exiles, he doesn't show up at all in issue number 1. I think as this progresses, Laval's going to have more to do with Doug than probably I was anticipating. Just in hearing him talk about that, I feel like there's plans there. And I'm pretty interested in that because I feel like, Doug has become his connection to Warlock, his connection to Krakoa, his role as the sort of middle ground, neutral side of the, control for Krakoa and for mutantdom is super fascinating and a little bit underexplored. So I think that could work. But yeah, as for like, is the Pit even in use post Sabretooth? Like, by all accounts, it shouldn't be. But I guess the other side of it is, I guess they must know. They know that Sabretooth's out, right? Because Mystique and Destiny confirm him. So that's not secret knowledge. Yeah, I mean, no, like there's no great reason to continue using the Pit other than the Quiet Council, or they make bad decisions and they're corrupted by their power. But yeah, good question. Okay. Let's see. Travis S. says, just read a theory on the X-Men subreddit that Mother Righteous could be one of the other Sinister clones. Any thoughts on this? Yeah. It's that I beat you to it. Beat you to it, X-Men subreddit. Take that. Already talked about it. Okay, I'm also seeing some conversation here about could the man with the peacock tattoo from the Ben Percy X-Force, the longest ongoing mystery in the history of Marvel Comics, could that be one of the Sinister clones? I flipping hope not. That would be so disappointing. I would hate that. I don't think it's likely. I think if we were at a different point in this narrative, that could have been an option. But no flipping way is that going to happen. Okay, Marcos asked, hey Dave, did the OG Essex split his mind in 4? And none of those are really him, but new beings entirely. Did you notice that the second data page in issue number 1 has a huge spoiler of every number 1 to number 12? Okay, so we talked about that second part just now. Do I think the 4 Sinisters are 4 aspects of Essex versus direct clones? That's an interesting theory. I mean, I guess that would explain why they're labeled differently, with the different suits, but also like why they're all out there doing seemingly different things. Yeah, I could buy it. I mean, I think I guess that's one maybe important distinction is like, okay, so there's 4 variations, but they're not just like 4 clones that are exactly the same, right? Or at least it doesn't seem that way because they're all doing very different things. They're all out there doing different things with very different focuses. So I suspect you're onto something there. I really do. Braden asks, do you think one of those Sinisters is a full-on hero? Maybe that one dressed as Captain America. That would be a fun twist. The Cap this whole time was a Mr. Sinister. I'm going to say absolutely not. No way. I think Secret Empire gave Marvel their absolute fill of Cap was secretly aligned with Nazis. Don't think they'll be pulling that trigger again. But I like the general outlandishness of that theory. I do enjoy that. Okay, let's see. Do you think the Chimeras might stick around after SOS? I think yes. I mean, it is interesting to consider like what a possible post SOS could look like for Mr. Sinister. Does he just become? I mean, I feel like the most likely scenario is he becomes the Hannibal Lecter. He's on ice, and we think we have him imprisoned in our control, but we want him around because he gives really good speeches. you know, and if that's the case, then yeah, chimeras are in play. I mean, I guess one thing to the first question we talked about is like the powers of 10 ideas about all the stuff Sinister did kind of in the future. I think that stuff will get played with in Sins of Sinister, but I don't think that that means it's not going to get touched on in the actual build and the present day X-Men comics. You know, like I think we're still going to be building to some of those ideas. They're just going to get played with like in a very fast and outlandish way in a rough and ready crossover, you know? Okay. I don't think Council knows Sabretooth and the others are out because Doug and Krakoa isn't telling them. You know, yeah, that's what I was considering is like, okay, maybe Doug wouldn't tell them. But Sabretooth literally runs into Mystique and Destiny on his way out. They go out there to stop him. They are alerted to that. Now, Destiny and Mystique could certainly keep their own secrets. So I'm not 100%. There's a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise and there's a lot of people that know, which makes me think probably that is a known thing, that everyone has escaped the pit. But that is, I could see it either way, actually. Jay says here, Doug, Destiny, Mystique are the only one aware he's loose, but in an X-Men Unlimited issue, the Council are aware that people have escaped the pit before. Yeah, I mean, if the Council is aware that someone has escaped the pit, what other situation would that be? Right? I mean, is there a first prisoner before Sabretooth? I don't think so. At least that we know of at this point. Okay, what other questions do we got? If Xavier gets thrown into the pit, does it justify the fall of X era? Now, I mean, originally when I saw the fall of X, I thought that was going to be the fall of Charlie, you know, to begin with. I thought that was going to be more about his fall. If he falls right before Sins of Sinister, I mean, somebody's getting thrown in the pit. It's right there in the teaser, and they have not lied to us once. Beast is a good guess. Like, somebody Sinister would be satisfied being thrown into the pit as well, which I guess is maybe everyone, but I feel like there would be extra satisfaction if it was smug Xavier, you know? I mean, I think the fall of X is already justified, right? The fall of Professor X is perfectly justified. It would, if you invert that, though, and you say, okay, look what happens to Krakoa without Professor X around, and actually it's bad, that would actually be kind of a nice turn on things. Because, like, listen, Professor X is a jerk. We all know this. He's arrogant. He's made mistake after mistake. At some point, I could get into rooting for him for once. You know, I could get into the hero turn. I could get into him actually doing some good business and good works and making Krakoa the thing it could have been. So that could potentially work together. I'm interested in that. Let's see. It says here, no way Fall of X ends the era. What are they going to do? Go back to the mansion? Yeah, I mean, I think the camps of folks who like there's a tent outside with like 3 guys who are like, let's go back to the mansion, make things good again. And then there's like a whole campground of folks who are like, please do not go back to the mansion. So yeah, I mean, I'm like, why? Why would you do that? It makes no sense. I already talked about it. There's no way that's happening. JD asks, thoughts on Kevin Conroy passing? I mean, like absolutely everyone, like incredibly sad news. It's a tragic passing. Just like the influence Kevin Conroy had on so many people is kind of amazing. I mean, absolutely is the voice of Batman, you know, through the animated series, through the video games. Like, that is 1,000,000% what I think of when I think of Batman, which is really impressive, I think, too, compared to, like, you know, if I think of Spider-Man, I actually don't think of any, like, the actors, right, in movies or whatever. And But, I'm closer to thinking about, like, I think of Hugh Jackman, right, for Wolverine. The fact that it would be actually just like a voice actor, not just, that's condescending. I don't mean to be. The fact that it's a voice actor that came to embody, I mean, the most popular superhero in America, is remarkable. Remarkable work. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tremendous, tremendous loss and a real bummer. Sad to see. I've actually really not seen, I haven't seen all of Batman the Animated Series. It has been on my, I so badly want to watch this list, but I'm saving it for when my kids are old enough to watch it with. That is like the one reason to like stay healthy. is to get old enough that I can watch Batman the Animated Series with my kids when they're old enough. That is my secret personal mission. But yeah, no, it's a sad loss. Let's see. What other questions do we got? I think the You're a Ghost line is a callback to mutants in the Powers of 10 future using a mnemonic trigger to wipe their minds when they're captured. Well, the two times we've seen it has been when Sinisters have died. So, and it's muttered after they begin to die, or maybe in progress. Like in Immortal #1, I think he starts like having all the black goo ooze out of his nose before he ever starts saying "you're a ghost." So I don't know that that works, but I like the idea. I do like the idea. That's interesting. Bring back a little bit more of Hero Xavier. Yeah, I mean, eventually it's going to be time. I do think that. It would be nice to see a bounce back. Where he here's the way he can do it, right? He has to admit his mistakes. He has to take less power, bring himself down several notches. But then yeah, it would be nice to see it. All right, what about Sinister planning himself as a Trojan horse inside certain families, like Xavier, Marco, and others, right? Which is what he does in the Mike Carey X-Men Legacy run. Could Helmet Bro Xavier be a Sinister hidden under our noses? At this point, no, because we've seen Professor Charlie several times, and I don't think that works anymore. But I mean, that would have been fun. It would have been fun, but no, I mean, I think that's the thing, is like these 4 Sinisters are all going to be 4 pretty different versions. We have a mutant one scheming. We have a human one with Orcus. We're going to get a reveal of a cosmic one, and I think we're going to get a reveal of a psychic, astral plane one. Do you think we'll see our boy Brew in the Brood crossover with Captain Marvel? Yes, 100%. Like, that is what the story's going to be. It's going to follow up on Brew is the king of the Brood. The announcement, the press release I got emailed for was like, yeah, like things aren't going amazing for King Brew, and this is the story that's going to follow up on it. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm definitely excited for it. Throw Blob in the pit, says Timothy. He's an irresponsible bartender facilitating Sage's alcoholism. Pit-worthy, I would argue nay. But a fair criticism. A fair criticism. I have never tended bar, so I definitely don't know the ins and outs of, like, when is it appropriate to cut someone off when they're clearly an alcoholic, which is what is happening with Sage, which is sad but also makes sense. Blob could take a stand. Blob could take a stand. And here's the thing, if he takes a stand, nobody's moving him. Ain't nobody moving that Blob. I think it could work. Good comment. I like it. If we get a heroic Xavier, he needs a less creepy costume. The black spandex and helmet look just screams villain. Yeah, but it's so cool. It's so cool. Charlie has never looked cooler. Maybe like, oh, you know what he should do? When Professor Charlie makes his hero turn, you go Hickman's FF with Steve Epting all white. Right? Give Xavier the white spandex, the white Cerebro helmet with that little bit of gold from the Hellfire Gala. That would rule. That would rule. Xavier was on a long road to redemption until House and Powers hit, James says. Now, that makes it sound like that would have been better which is not true. Hey, by the way, all of the Comic Book Herald No prizes to the first X-Office creator to touch on Professor Charlie's time as X when he like transported his mind into a very fit-looking Steve Rogers-esque body. Has not been mentioned, has not been dealt with. The longer it's never mentioned, the funnier it gets, I will admit. But again, all of the no prizes to whoever actually addresses, even just an aside. Karen could do it. Karen could do it in Immortal number 10. If that's going to be the Professor Charlie book, give me one joke. Give me one joke about the time Professor X transformed himself into a hunk. What was he doing during that time? Nobody knows. Oh, it was Phantom X's body. Okay, it was drawn very hunky. Although I actually don't think of Phantom X being that. Come on, I want one joke. That's all I ask. All I ask. Somebody reference it. Let's see. If there were another FF X-Men crossover in this era, what would be an exciting premise? Hey, remember when Chip Zdarsky wrote a Fantastic Four X-Men crossover and it ended with like Doctor Doom planning a secret war against mutants? That hasn't been mentioned in several years. There's another thread we can and should come back to. I mean, I think the exciting premise for me would be fulfilling that promise. You've got Valeria Richards and Doctor Doom talking about some sort of war with Krakoa. Like, do it. Do that. I'm here for it. Xavier is the new Yay. I can't support that. Professor X has done bad things, but I don't... Even with all of the mistakes, has not tarnished his reputation to that degree. Even with all of the mistakes. I think Beast is our closest Yay competition, actually. Right? Like, if I have to make a 1-to-1, it's Beast and Yay. You know? In my head, I'm kind of like, okay, then is Jay-Z... Who's Jay-Z? Is Drake Colossus? But I would need to sit down and write this one out to get it right. But I feel good about that Beast comp. All right, what else we got? All right, we got like 10 minutes. Get in your questions. I'm going to take one more drink. Get in as many questions as you can. I will address all of them. Thank you. So the plan is this Saturday, November, 20th? Is that how time works? No, it's Sunday. This Sunday, November 20th. I should be interviewing Karen Gillan live here on the Comic Book Herald channel. That will, of course, be made available to everyone after the fact as well if you can't join us. I'll try to put that post up. So like, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff if you want to make sure you see when that interview is happening. I've got a gazillion questions. It's going to be like kind of a Judgment Day post-game show, but obviously it's also going to be like, we're going to have to talk about Immortal X-Men, the build of Sins of Sinister. Plus, I've been reading every creator-owned thing they've ever done. It should be really fun. I'm having a blast going through. So I read all of Die, which I slept on a little bit. I read the first volume and I was kind of like, okay, like I don't do RPGs, so it's kind of not my thing. That book gets better and better and better as it goes. Really enjoyed Die. Definitely improved in my estimation. I'm also now, apparently I never finished The Wicked and the Divine. I'm realizing. So I'm doing that, having a blast doing that. That's already ranked fairly highly on my best comics of all time list. It's definitely going to go up. It does some super interesting, inventive things there with Jamie McKelvey. And then, Once and Future, I'm catching up on and having a blast. I'm a sucker for some good Beowulf action, and this series delivers. Also, Dan Mora, just like off the charts, cool artist. Off the charts. So yeah, I'm having a blast doing the creator-owned Gillen special. Listen, like if for no other reason, my long con to set up a comic book website that would allow me to have private conversations with my favorite writers and force me to create homework for myself to read all of those awesome comics that I haven't made time for yet. Like, just highly recommended. Highly recommended long con. It's going very well for me. Thanks for asking. Let's see. Demarius asks, were those Doombot Sentinels? Yeah, Doom did make Doom Sentinels. That should come up again as well. That should definitely come up again as well. Let's see. RZ says, I sent you a super chat. Oh, no. Oh no, let's get to scrolling and find that puppy. There it is. I recommend today Blade Vampire Nation one shot. Great take of Jason Aaron's vampire plot. Henry Kissinger is a vampire working with Dracula with Sun Tzu. You know, if I didn't remember seeing that Mark Russell was writing that, that last sentence would have told me that that is the case. Mark Russell's awesome and does some really good stuff with Big Two concepts. So I will actually check that out. I will definitely check that out because Mark Russell's writing. So thanks for the recommendation. I appreciate it. Let's see the other comics I read today. I read Gold Goblin, which didn't do a ton for me. And was there anything else new? I read the first 7 issues of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely on New X-Men because we're covering that on the My Marvelous Year podcast this weekend. That's a trip. That's if you haven't before read Grant Morrison's X-Men pitch manifesto, just Google that, like Grant Morrison New X-Men, manifesto. It is a fascinating read. There's so much interesting thinking there in terms of like how do we make the X-Men cool, what makes for a cool X-Men story. There's also just some really good like evergreen thinking on like, Morrison says stuff to the effect of like Marvel got too conservative and we're just playing the hits to all the fanboys who are going to buy the comics anyway. Like we need to new interesting stuff to reach new audiences. It's a really interesting read. And I enjoyed it. Oh, speaking of really interesting reads and my Gillen binge, Google Gillen Dazzler pitch. I had not read this before. Kieran Gillen wrote a Dazzler pitch back in 2007. And not only is it super fun to read, and it is, it sounds like it would have been a really fun comic, it is shockingly predictive of what just happened in Judgment Day. Check it out if you don't believe me. Okay. What else do we got here? Any final questions? Apparently, Gillen had to sacrifice a number of story threads for the Axe event. Maybe ask him to go a little more in depth on that if he can during your interview. That's a good question. That's a good question, right? What didn't you have space for? What got cut? That sort of thing. That can always be intriguing. We can throw it out there. I like it. We'll give credit here to Banksy Maine as well, if there's time. Okay, what else do we got? What book from next week releases are you looking forward to? What are next week's releases? I don't know. I haven't even looked yet. Let's check that out right now. Live on the mic. We're going to pull them up. Let's see. I mean, it's Thanksgiving week, so I'm guessing it's going to be a little less packed. Maybe is how that goes. We got Dark Web stuff kicking off. We got X-Men number 17. We got an X-Force book. Right now, it's looking like not many. Defenders number 5. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that mini all together. Ooh, you know what, actually? You know what I'm most looking forward to? Trad Moore doing Doctor Strange Fall Sunrise. It's going to be a 4-issue, I mean, presumably definitely out of continuity series. Trad Moore is a brilliant artist. They did Silver Surfer Black with Donny Cates, one of the coolest looking Marvel books of the last several years. That should be cool. I'm looking forward to that first issue. That should be a really good time. Okay. Thanks for the questions, everybody. This has been a blast, as always. Comics are good. X-Men comics are fun. Mr. Sinister is a great villain. Sins of Sinister is going to rule. I will see you all this weekend as I talk to Karen. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and enjoy the comics.